I'm going to rate every single item in Fortnite Chapter 6 Season 2 from absolute useless all the way up to items that define the meta. Let's start things off with the assault rifles. So the first assault rifle is obviously the Hollow Twister assault rifle. Now this has been in the meta for a season already. Most of you already probably know how good it is. As a scope, its hit scan, it's good for pressuring. It's just a staple assault rifle that's in the meta. Unsurprisingly, it is still the meta. However, there are also two other assault rifles which are actually strong competition to it. The first is the Striker Burst assault rifle. Now this kind of plays the exact same role as the Hollow, where it has a scope and is mainly used for long range. If you use this in close range, you'll realize it's kind of awful, or maybe my aim is just non-existent, which is also highly likely too. The two bursts per shot basically mean if you aim relatively low on a player, the recoil will pull up and you're almost guaranteed to hit both of them. So you can basically guarantee yourself 60 damage at medium to long ranges with one burst. It is then difficult to follow up with another burst after that to repeatedly hit shot after shot, where the Hollow is a little bit stronger in that scenario. It's also a little bit weird when you're trying to box fight, as replacing walls with a burst is always kind of awkward to time it exactly right. The controller players are also telling me that this apparently has zero aim assist, so you may struggle there if you're on controller. I think they're relatively even, and I made a post on Twitter and here in the YouTube community, and basically everyone couldn't decide which one they thought was better. So I think both of these are the meta. It'll just be kind of preference which one you actually end up choosing. The third assault rifle is the collateral damage assault rifle. Now this is completely different from the other two and fills a completely different role. Where the other two are really good at long range and medium range because they have a scope, this does not, and instead it's really good in close range. The best way I could compare this is kind of to the combat SMG back from Chapter 3, where its insanely fast fire rate makes it nuts when you're really up close to someone. At long ranges, it's just really difficult to do a lot of damage. The damage per second of this is 204, which if you compare it to the Hollow AR, it's 156 when you're both in blue rarity. This means it actually does 31% more damage per second, and if you jump in someone's box with it, you will absolutely recognize that. Now, if you're going to W key or get into someone's face, then it's really good, but again, at range, it's probably not the best, and if you're playing a tournament that involves Surge, it's also probably not something that you'd actually pick up. Another downside of it is that it absolutely drains your ammo because the fire rate is so fast, so unless you're actually getting a bunch of elims and refreshes, it's maybe not the best one to pick. Outside of that though, it's really good for solos, and a lot of players will probably take it in solos specifically. So all three of these assault rifles, in my opinion, are the meta. It just depends which meta you're actually playing and what your preferences are. Moving on to the shotguns, these are relatively similar to last season, but there is no longer an Oni shotgun. We have the Sentinel pump, which as you know is unbelievably strong. Its structure damage is probably the biggest selling point over any other pump shotgun that we've ever seen. You can basically just continually shoot walls with it over and over again in a completely brain dead way to allow you to replace and weaken other players' builds and pressure them. Outside of that, it's just a really solid pump shotgun. It is the meta, unsurprisingly. And then the other shotgun is the Twin Fire auto shotgun, which is kind of awful. Now, the main scenario for this, where I've seen high-level players take it, is in laggy lobbies. So last Grands, for example, where it was horrific server performance, I did see one game where Queasy took it. Now, this might be because he didn't find another shotgun, or maybe because he thought this is the laggy lobby. If I get in box, it's going to be good. But outside of that, you're basically only carrying this when you don't have something better. You know it, absolutely useless. Now, starting with the SMGs, apparently the new Plasma Burst Laser is an SMG. Now, when I first tested this, I used it on a bunch of NPCs, and I thought this thing was amazing. I've also seen a clip from Boop that he posted where Queasy's team were testing it on height, because as you see, as you spray, there's a slight explosive effect, but it just in reality doesn't appear to be that strong. I'm yet to see a good player carry it and use it efficiently, and I myself, not a good player, I have not had a huge amount of success with it either. It doesn't require any ammo, which is super useful. I think the main upside of this is the fact that you can just use it to open the vault faster. It's also odd to box fight with and wall replace because of the odd timed explosions that it has, and the structure damage is relatively low. Now, this is one I'm not really sure on, but I'm going to put it in the no complaints tier. However, I do think there might be some random players out there who carry this and just think it's amazing. The next two items are both items that have been returning from the previous season, which is the Veiled Precision SMG and then the Suppressed Pistol. Both of these play a really useful role, where if you're playing in a team mode like trios and the rest of your team are all carrying assault rifles that drain medium ammo, in particular the new Collateral Damage AR, which as I mentioned already drains through ammo, you can have one player carrying one of these two items. That means that that player is then using mini ammo when the rest are using medium ammo, and that was actually something we saw a lot last season. However, both of them are not necessarily that strong, so they're going to go into the no complaints tier. Very well balanced items in my mind. Unlike the Mammoth Pistol, Oh man, I'm sure this one will divide some people. But I'm going to start this off by saying I love the Mammoth pistol. When I use it in reload, it's so fun. But it's so fun because I can respawn after I get absolutely banged in the head by it. If you kill someone with it, it feels great. But if you get shot by it, it's the worst weapon in the world. Now, a big problem this season is that there's almost infinite large ammo. Not in a literal sense, but it just feels really easy to continually get the bullets to reload it with. And the result of this is that people are just always sitting on hills far away from you, spamming you with this gun, trying to hit big damage shots, and not actually fighting you at all. We've not even had a tournament yet, but I guarantee this is how it's going to go. Because if rank's going like that, tournaments will be even worse. They're also incredibly easy to find, and on top of that, there's no real mobility this meta, which we'll come back to later. There's no masks like the previous season, which can get you instantly rotated, which means that a lot of players are just rotating by foot. So if you're going to rotate by foot, you're going to get shot more. People are either going to wait in front of you or wait behind you and just shoot you with the Mammoth pistol. So unfortunately, this gun's going to be incredibly annoying when it comes to tournaments. So as much as I love this weapon, it is going into the please nerf tier. I don't actually want it nerfed because it's a fun gun to use outside of tournaments, but I want it taken out of tournaments because it's just annoying. There is another weapon that we left in though, and that is the Falconized Sniper. Now, this is 3 shots before you reload, which is kind of annoying, so maybe that part isn't balanced, but only the gold and mythic are able to one-shot headshot. This means that the annoying just one bang snipes that happen when you're 200 and you make a slight over peak don't necessarily happen as much this season, but you're still punished for making that peak. What makes it much more balanced than the Mammoth pistol is that it's not hit scan. Since the bullet has a time to travel, it makes it a little bit more difficult and it's a bit more rewarding to hit that big damage shot. However, the problem is, why would you ever take this when the Mammoth pistol is in the game? If you can repeatedly hit big shots with the Mammoth pistol easily because it's hit scan, why would you take the sniper over that? Personally, I don't think I would, and I don't think players in tournaments would either. So for me, this is going into the no complaints tier, and to be honest with you, I actually think that snipers fit really nicely into competitive as long as they're balanced well. I know a lot of players will disagree with that, a lot will agree, but they make good clips. Next, we're moving on to the 5 new boons that were in the game. Now, an important note is that these are all quite difficult to actually get. Each one individually has a 2.67% spawn rate from chests, or you can buy them from the markets that are around. However, these require dilbits, which you need to go to a vault for, so they're incredibly difficult to get. The first one is the Adrenaline Rush boom. And this gives you the slap effect when you mantle, hurdle, or wall jump, which is really good for endgame solos or solo clutching if you're low on materials, because you can basically just sprint for a significant amount of time. These are hard to find, but they're definitely well balanced. Next is the gold ammo boon, which gives you ammo as you pick up bars. And because bars are a massive part of this season, that means they're relatively easy to get. So if you get ammo as you get bars, that means that this is really powerful because, as we mentioned, there's a lot of weapons that drain your ammo this season already. So having more ammo is going to be even better for fighting and for lasting longer in games. Yet another one that's nicely balanced. Next up is the Gold Rush boon, which when you're opening or destroying chests grants you Gold Rush. Now this is really useful for the early game because the Gold Rush effect allows you to swing your pickaxe faster and move faster, plus your pickaxe does more damage. So essentially, if you need to harvest your materials off spawn and you find one of these, you're going to be able to harvest them significantly faster, which obviously is useful because then you can rotate faster, get to positions faster, and so on. However, you're just never going to find it in the early game, so if you find it later on, or you find it once you've already managed to get yourself a lot of loot, it's probably just not going to be that useful. So it's going into the no complaints tier. Second last one is the Greed boon, which gives you extra bars from eliminations and when opening containers. Now this is quite useful if you actually combine it with the gold ammo boon, because you're going to get more bars, which means you get more ammo. So it's kind of this cycle where you can continually be stacked on ammo. But again, it's also going to be really difficult just to find both of these, but it'll be useful regardless. So this is also in no complaints. And finally, there's the Vulture boon. Now this is the most overpowered boon I think we may have ever seen. It will show anyone who dies on the map at any range whatsoever. You can see as a player dies here, they pop up on the little mini-map, but they also actually pop up at the top of your screen too, and a little symbol shows up exactly on your screen showing you where they died. If you manage to luckily get this in the early game, you can see anyone who dies around you, which will allow you to rotate in and third party. You can also guaranteed get this at the bird to go drop spot here as well for 1 dilbit. Obviously, this is the meta. Next, we're moving on to the fishing, and fishing has actually taken a massive change this season. So historically, in the previous season, when you fished in no fishing spots, there was a 50% chance of getting a shieldfish. This is now actually down to 10%, which is grand because everyone was surge trading like crazy, just fishing, surge trade, fishing, surge trade. So I think this nerf makes a lot of sense. So instead, there's a 60% chance of getting a small fry, 30% chance of getting a flopper, then a 10% chance of getting a shieldfish. So overall, all of these I'm just going to put into the staples. They've been in for so long. They're there if you need them, basically. Speaking of staples, we've also got the medkit, small pots, and shield potions, also just going into these staples. But a new item that's been added is the med mist smoke grenade. Now this thing is really interesting because as you throw it down, it basically gives you an area of heal that you can be in that only heals you for white. Now the interesting part of this is if you're getting lobby focused and you're getting lobby sprayed and you're weak, you can throw this down inside your box and it makes it much more difficult for players to shoot you because, well, they just simply can't aim at you because they don't know where you are inside of the smoke. Another way this is going to be really good is also just from heal off. If you throw it down in the storm, you're going to be able to use other heals on top of this to continue your heal off as long as possible. So this item is definitely the meta in my eyes. Next one is another the meta item. I'm spoiling it, which is the chug jug. Now this season, if you've played, you'll realize there's been a good few changes to the chug jug. And rather than just waiting a full 15 seconds to heal up your entire HP, it slowly drains away and you actually have a 200 ammo, don't know what the right word for it is, 200 uses maximum that you can use from, and it'll slowly drain. This means it's pretty much a guaranteed 200 HP carry, so it's more than any minis, big pots that you can possibly carry. So yes, absolutely carry it. This is the meta. Similarly though, in a 10-tick storm, you can just sit and out heal it for the entire time. So this thing is incredibly strong, and I think a really cool update, but we'll see how bad heal offs end up getting in tournaments. Another 3 in a row, the meta item is also, of course, the water sprite. Returning from the previous season, 50 HP to you and your teammates if you throw it down. It's one of the most valuable items you can use, and you can just find them all around the map as well. It instantly heals you for 30 HP. Not much more to say about it. It's a guaranteed carry. It is the meta. Its cousin, the air sprite, is not so lucky. Now, you may think because there's not as much mobility items, say the mask isn't in here, the blades are kind of gone. We'll come to the current mobility items later, but there's not any really overpowered mobility items yet in the season. So you may think the air sprite's better because in end-games you'll be able to use it to fly, but one of the big problems is it breaks the builds around you, meaning you're completely unsafe. Given the assault rifles are hit scan and they have scopes on them, it's incredibly easy to hit you if you're gliding through the sky. So using an air sprite to fly straight up is just not good at all. The only application for this is really when you're in the storm in early game and you want to rotate far. You can find one, throw it, and go. Chances are, if you're carrying it, you've just not found anything better to carry, so this is going in the it's wraps tier. However, the throwable launch pad, I'm actually putting in the meta. Totally other sides of the ranking spectrum, I understand. But the main big difference here between these two is the fact that you can control what you do with a launch pad way more. So you can put a ramp over your head and you can short pad, which means you're not going to fly straight up into the sky. Also, it just doesn't destroy the builds that you're standing on like the air sprite does. This means you can be much more controlled and direct about where you actually want to fly, and you can cut off a couple zones. More importantly, the air sprite only has one use and you can't go and pick it up. However, you can carry 2 of the throwable launch pads, which means you can actually cut 2 zones off, making it much more worth that 1 inventory slot. This is one of the best mobility items in the season, so it's definitely the meta. And the last heal is the new gold splash. Now this acts as a normal chug splash, healing you and your teammates for 20 HP or shield, but at the same time it also gives you the gold rush effect that we talked about earlier. Now the main benefit for this is that you can triple crazy pickaxe in endgame into people's boxes before they even understand and then pump them and kill them, which is definitely balanced, by the way, definitely not broken, but it also gives you that increased movement speed. So for a lot of endgame rotations, you can just throw one and then make a real ground sprint rotate, or you can tarp with the increased movement speed at the same time. So this is kind of the main mobility item that I think we're going to see a lot in FNCS and in trios. Definitely the meta, no doubt about it. This is one of the most powerful healing items we've ever seen. Next up is the next mobility item, which is the kneecapper, which... great name, Epic. I must tell you, that's a fantastic name for an item. Kind of brutal, I'll give you that. Now, if you sprint with this, you have increased movement speed, but you also have no fall damage if you sprint jump. And it's actually the only item in the game, maybe outside of the air sprite, so maybe there can be some uses for this, that actually stops fall damage. So for teams who in endgame really love to play height, the kneecapper might be for you because as you're getting chopped out by another team, you can simply sprint jump with it to cancel any fall damage. It's also just the classic melee item that Fortnite have added every single season, that annoys every single build player when they just have 3 people running in their box just swinging it. Like, you're beating people to death with a baseball bat. It's kind of rock and roll right now, I'm not gonna lie. But there's also a cool strategy where if you hold the right click, you can see the swing charging, and you can hit your own teammates and fire them far. Now, you might think this is kind of useless for rotations, but I do think there may be some application for this in fights, where if you want your teammate to flank and he's really close to you, you can just fire him far, get behind the other team there and pinch them. Now, will we see any teams doing that in FNCS? I'm not 100%. Maybe I'm just theory crafting here, but we may see a clip of that at some point this season. I would say, though, you might want to learn how to do this properly. Yeah, as you can all die as a full trio. So yeah, it might take some practice. Pretty much every single pro player is carrying these right now. They are just the meta. Next up is the Sub-Zero's combat kit. This is a very similar item. I'll be honest, I've not had enough time to try it yet before I put this video out, so I may amend this section down below in the comments, but it doesn't feel that powerful. The main benefit is you can ice walk and pretend you're Jesus over the water, which is cool, I guess, but I don't think it's necessarily that powerful, and I don't think the mobility of it is very good. Again, I haven't done enough testing on this item in particular, but I'm going to put it into the no complaints. Next up is the Thermite. Now, I actually thought this would be incredibly overpowered, because if you throw it onto someone's box, it actually acts quite like a stink grenade. It will damage them through it onto the other side, but it actually takes a little couple seconds to get started. The damage per second really isn't that good, and you can easily just rebox or move away. Its obviously main use is for getting into the vaults, so even if it was overpowered, Fortnite will never remove it from tournaments, so I'm going to put this into the no complaints tier. It also does a total structure damage of 196 very specifically, so if you throw it onto a wood wall, it will destroy that wood wall. It'll just take some time. The next new utility item is the Pulse Scanner. This is actually quite interesting, and when I first used it, I thought it was going to be really broken. So essentially, when you throw it down, it scans chests and players around you. Now, what makes this relatively balanced is the fact that this effect doesn't really last that long. So if you notice, you throw it down, it'll scan a player, but the player's mark won't actually stay for more than around 5 seconds, and it'll use it again a little bit later. The location of it is also shown to the other player in the middle of the fight, so they can go and destroy it. One of the things that makes it so good, though, is in early game, if you get one out of one of your heist bags, you can throw it down and immediately see anyone around you when they have minimal materials, which is super powerful. I also think it will be good for mid-game fights too, and because it's not an amazing mobility item, if you're trying to get into 3v3 fights, it may be really worth just carrying one of these, throwing it down on a team who's boxed up, and getting literal wall hacks to see where they are. To me, this one is going in the meta. Next up, these next 4 are all not in tournaments. That is the Shield Bubble Junior, which is funny because there's actually a coin that gives you shield bubbles, which we'll come back to in a second. The Portal Cover, which is a new zero build item you can throw down to give yourself shield. I really like this. I think this is a really cool balance. I'm not actually sure why this one isn't in tournaments. It doesn't really make sense. The Shockwave Grenades, which are just coming back almost every season, again, not in tournaments. And the final one, if you played ranked, you will know the Grenade Launcher is one of the most annoying items of all time to be spammed at every single build of yours. Thankfully, this item is not in tournaments as well. This would be straight in the please nerf tier if it was. Get that thing out of here, man. I hate the rank this season, so annoying because of this thing. The final 2 items are the medallions as well. They are the Unstoppable Medallion and the Super Shield Medallion. Now, the Unstoppable Medallion knocks back enemies when you sprint into them and also gives you increased movement speed. If you watch it, it looks relatively similar to Nitro, but don't worry, it doesn't actually have any structure damage when you run into builds, so it's not the exact same as that. Thank you. Very much so appreciate that. The speed increase actually stacks with the gold splash, so if you use both of them together in endgames, you basically just fly. You just zoom through the endgames. So the combination of these is really good in solos. It's probably not that great for trios unless you're sending one person off to go scout somewhere. You can also sprint into people and knock them and kill them to fall damage, but I'm not sure how good this will actually be in tournaments because it's not often you just sprint at people and hit them into storm and hope they die because they'll just shoot you or build in front of you. I'm going to put this one into the no complaints tier because it also still shows you on the map and it's not incredibly powerful, but there may be some cool strategies we'll see with it later on in the season. And finally, the Super Shield Medallion. This is really interesting and actually probably one of the most powerful things in the season. Anytime you pop a consumable shield, not chug splashes or anything like that, something you physically have to drink like minis, bigs, or a med kit, for example, or the chug jug, which I said you can continually reuse over and over again, you're seeing where this is going, it will spawn a Shield Bubble Junior to protect yourself. Now, if you're in a late rotation and teams start shooting at you, you can just simply start healing and a shield bubble will drop around you. This means that they physically cannot hit you at all, so you're free to heal. If you also combine this with the Medmis Smoke Grenade, that means you won't be able to be seen inside of that, and you'll have a shield bubble around you, so most players will just give up and stop lobby focusing you, allowing you to freely heal. This one spawns on the island, and you have to fight Shogun X for it. Now, if you watched my previous video, you'll know how good the island is by itself. So getting this, plus the medallion, plus the mythic holo from the island is super strong. So I think we're going to see a lot of the best teams playing for Shogun's Arena again this season. That is every item. If you think I skipped the mythics, I've included them as part of the individual items in there too. But if you want to learn how the best teams in the world are using the island to their advantage in the highest level of tournaments, you can click on this video right here.